started here. All right. So again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining today's grant solicitation webinar, FY 2019, Mentoring Opportunities for Youth Initiative Solicitation webinar. My name is William Moore, and I am with the National Training and Technical Assistance Center, and as your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of Adobe Connect webinar platform and provide a few announcements to keep in mind. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be published on NTTAC's YouTube page. The webinar recording will be archived on NTTAC's YouTube channel, where you can also view past webinars. For the event transcript and supporting materials, please contact the OJJDP NTTAC Help Desk. For those wishing to download a copy of the PowerPoint slides and other important documents, you may do so by locating the handouts pod directly above the chat area. Here, you will also find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address technical related questions. Click on the file name, then click the download button. During today's webinar, presenters will address questions during our Q&A segment. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. Those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing alone, there is no need to type anything into the chat pod at this time. Again, enter only the number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing alone, there is no need to type anything at this time. And I'll give folks a couple of seconds to do that. Following today's webinar, attendees will be sent a certificate of attendance. The certificate is sent approximately 1 hour following the conclusion of the event and is sent via an Adobe Connect thank you email. Please keep an eye on your email for the certificate. Please note that only participants that are registered and signed in will receive a certificate of attendance. And finally, at the conclusion of today's webinar, you are provided with a link to a brief evaluation about today's presentation. The feedback you provide is used to assist in future planning and training. I will now turn our grant solicitation over to our moderator, Carrie Strug, for today's webinar.
Thank you, William. So we're going to start out with the vision of OJJDP, which is we envision a nation where our children are free from crime and violence, and if they do come into contact with the justice system, the contact should be both just and beneficial to them. This is our mission statement. We provide national leadership, coordination, and resources to prevent and respond to juvenile delinquency and victimization. We support the efforts of states, tribes, and communities to develop and implement effective and equitable juvenile justice systems that enhance public safety, ensure youth are held appropriately accountable to both crime victims and communities, and we also empower them to live productive, law-abiding lives. Today, your presenters are Kristen Kracky, a Senior Program Specialist, Eric Stansberry, who is a longtime Program Manager of OJJDP, and myself, Carrie Strug. So today's webinar objectives are that we want to provide you a general overview of the solicitation. We want to highlight key eligibility and solicitation requirements. We'll identify tools and resources that will facilitate the application process. And at the end, we hope to provide you an opportunity to ask some questions. So our mentoring overview, as many of you know, mentoring promotes positive behaviors, attitudes, and outcomes for youth, and it reduces risk factors. It's been shown to improve academic performance, social and job skills, support behavioral or other personal development, while reducing the consumption of alcohol and other drugs. Successful mentoring programs include matches between a mentor and one or more youth. It can take place in multiple and informal settings and in a school or program context. So the primary goals of OJJDP's mentoring program are to promote the expansion of high-quality mentoring services for at-risk youth across the nation. And we want to reduce juvenile delinquency, alcohol and drug abuse, specifically opioid abuse, truancy, and other high-risk behaviors. So regarding this particular solicitation, it was released on February 20th, and all applications need to be in by April 22nd. All awards will be in the form of a grant, and the project periods can range from 12 to 36 months in all of the categories. That is up to you, the applicant. And you should make sure your budget matches the proposed project period. For-profit organizations must forego any for-profit or management fee. So the program-specific information for all 5 categories are these bullets here. The program supports the implementation and delivery of one-to-one peer and group mentoring for a combination of these types of mentoring services. The program should support enhancements to both improve access to and the impact of mentoring services. And all applicants in all the categories must initiate mentoring services to youth who are 17 years or younger at the time of admission. So one of the key objectives is to provide mentoring tailored to the needs of the identified at-risk and system-involved youth population. So all of you should address how you will tailor your mentoring program delivery to the needs of the designated target population by describing these targeted mentoring practices under each of the 6 core areas of elements of effective practice, which you can find on OJJDP's National Mentoring Resource Center site. For those of you that are not familiar, here they are, the 6 areas: recruitment, screening, training, matching and initiation, monitoring and support, and closure. So you're going to need to describe the following: the target population, identify the risk factors and the services needed for that population, and explain how the proposed mentoring approach will appropriately respond to the needs of the target population in a way that is likely to promote positive outcomes. The second objective, develop and implement enhanced practices that further align with research. Again, you should address each of the 6 core standards of practice listed at OJJDP's National Mentoring Resource Center's website, and here they are again, the 6 areas. So we want you to identify enhancements in each of the 6 core standards of practice. We would like you to address how you will further promote family engagement in the program design or approach as well. So in this solicitation, it's grown over the years, and we have 5 categories. There's the National Mentoring Program, which is Category 1, the Multi-State Mentoring Programs, which is Category 2, mentoring programs for youth involved in the juvenile justice system, which is Category 3, and the 2 categories associated with opioids, mentoring strategies for youth impacted by opioids, the project sites, is Category 4, and the statewide and regional mentoring initiative for youth impacted by opioids is Category 5. Now we are going to go through and review each of these 5 funding categories by budget amount, eligibility, and priority considerations. So I would actually like to turn it over to my colleague, Kristen Crackey now.
Thank you, Carrie. And as Carrie noted in the slides before, the target population and budget and project period details that apply to all categories. What I'm going to cover next for Category 1 and Category 2 are the details specific just to these categories. Eric will then go over Categories 3, 4, and 5, but please keep in mind that the previous criteria that Carrie spoke about applies to all of the categories in addition to what Eric and I go over now. So with regard to national mentoring programs, Category 1, this category pertains specifically to organizations that have a national or the widest reach possible. They are to cover all of the states nationally and must be participating with active chapters or recipients in at least 45 states. We are looking for the widest reach possible. The organization who submits as the lead applicant must be through the national headquarters. They must be the organization that submits the application. The applicant can come in with additional organizations, 2 or more, as long as they form a collaborative to meet that 45 state requirement and the national headquarters is the lead applicant. The requested award amount should cover the entire proposed project period and be based on the cost of implementing the proposed program. This is the only category where there isn't a specific budget range, but that budget proposed should be based on the cost of implementing the proposed project design. OJJDP will make 5 awards in this category. In addition, OJJDP encourages applicants to minimize their administrative costs, and in an effort to subaward to at least 90% of the award to active chapters and subrecipients. I'll talk about how that is, subrecipients are defined in a minute. But OJJDP encourages at least 90% be subawarded to subrecipients across at least 38 states, while at the same time, of course, assuring effective subrecipient oversight. Organization may apply in this category and may also apply under Category 5. What is an active chapter or subrecipient? For OJJDP's definition for purpose of this solicitation is that it's a local branch of an organization or a local affiliated organization. However, that relationship must be formalized in a contract or other written agreement between the parties involved and must predate the solicitation. So relationships formed as a result of applying for the solicitation do not satisfy that requirement. With regard to target population in the national mentoring category, the target population should, in addition to being 17 and younger at the point of admission, the target population should include youth who are identified at risk or high risk for involvement in the juvenile justice system. For this category specifically, applicants must address a plan for serving American Indian and Alaska Native youth with the grant fund, both on and off reservation. And then lastly, OJJDP strongly encourages applicants to target mentoring services specifically for providing opportunities for youth and law enforcement engagement. Also, with regard to target population, OJJDP encourages applicants to include services in the following population areas. And we ask you to describe how those services will support the unique needs of children with active military duty parents, incarcerated parents, youth with disabilities, youth with opioid and substance abuse problems, and youth in rural communities. Moving to multi-state mentoring programs, which is Category 2. This category pertains to organizations that have established mentoring programs for at least 3 years and have active chapters and subawardees in at least 5 states, but fewer than 45 states. Because if you are operating in 45 states, you would be applying under Category 1. Applicants in Category 2 can apply for up to $2 million in funding for the minimum requirement of at least 5 states and up to $4 million in funding for programs that demonstrate the broadest reach. We'll talk about the definition of broadest reach in a second. OJJDP will make up to 12 awards in this category. And again, you may apply with 2 or more independent organizations to form a collaborative in order to meet that 5-state requirement. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. 2 or more organizations to form a collaborative to meet the 5-state requirement does not meet the eligibility requirement. And any organization that applies in this category may also apply to receive funds in categories 3 and 4. Okay, with regard to broadest reach, OJJP is looking for how applicants address the proposed mentoring approach to reach as diverse and broad a population of youth as possible. It will be one of the priority considerations with regard to Category 2. OJJP will also consider other factors in determining funding decisions that will include number of states where the applicant organization can show a history of providing mentoring services, the number of states where the applicant proposes to use the grant award services, the number of program sites where the applicant organization can demonstrate a history of providing mentoring services through subawards, the number of youth served, the number of mentors recruited, and the diversity of the youth being served. So that's how OJJDP is looking for broadest reach for this category. The target population for multi-state mentoring, applicants are encouraged to include services and describe the unique way they'll provide support for the unique needs, again, for children with active military duty parents, children of incarcerated parents, youth with disabilities, youth with opioid and substance abuse problems, and youth in rural communities. At this, so at this point, we'll turn to Eric to discuss Category 3.
Category 3, mentoring program for youth involved in the juvenile justice system. This category provides for mentoring services, system-involved youth as part of the juvenile justice system's diversion services, the goal of rehabilitation and accountability. There'll be up to $500,000 in funding. The target population will be youth served, screened as low risk by the juvenile justice agency partner through a diversion and post-adjudication program or alternative to detention approach. Eligible applicants are limited to private organizations, nonprofit organizations, and for-profit organizations, including tribal, nonprofit, and for-profit organizations, and faith-based organizations. Joint application from 2 or more eligible applicants are welcome. However, one applicant must be clearly indicated as the primary applicant, and the others are indicated as co-applicants. The applicant must have operated an established mentoring program for at least 1 year. The applicant must have a demonstrated partnership via a memorandum of understanding with a juvenile justice agency, a public agency legally responsible for handling juvenile crime and delinquency in the state, tribe, city, or county. Youth and law enforcement. Applicants are encouraged to provide opportunities for youth and law enforcement engagement as part of their program model and approach. We are encouraging program investments in economic distressed communities, and applicants should include that information in their application that specifies how the project will enhance public safety in a specified qualified opportunity zone. Mentoring strategies for youth impacted by opioids. This category provides for mentoring services as part of the prevention, treatment, and supportive approach for youth impacted by opioids. Up to $500,000 available in funding. The target population. Applicants must target services youth impacted by opioids. Impacted youth include youth who are currently using or have used opioids, youth at high risk for opioid use, or there's the presence of risk factors for such, youth with family members who are currently using or have used opioids. Eligible applicants are limited to private organizations, nonprofit organizations, and for-profit organizations, including tribal, nonprofit, and for-profit organizations, and faith-based organizations. Joint applications from 2 or more eligible applicants are welcome. However, one applicant must be clearly indicated as the primary applicant and the others indicated as co-applicants. The applicant must have operated an established mentoring program for at least 1 year. The applicant must have a demonstrated partnership via a memorandum of understanding for public or private substance abuse treatment agency. Demonstrated partnerships. Applicant partnerships can be established specifically in response to this funding opportunity. However, priority consideration will be given to agencies demonstrating existing relationships with substance abuse treatment agencies. Rural communities. Priority will be given to applicants that target services in rural communities across the country as defined by the Office of Management Budget on the basis of the standards for delineating metropolitan, micropolitan statistical areas. Again, we encourage program investment in economic distressed communities, qualified opportunity zones. This category supports a broad-based approach to building mentoring program capacity in targeted regions throughout the country to help youth impacted by opioids. Up to $1,250,000 in funding is available. Target population. Applicants must target services to youth impacted by opioids. Impacted youth include youth who are currently using or have used opioids, youth at high risk for opioid use, and youth with family that are involved in substance abuse.
William, it looks like we lost the screen, so if you can provide some assistance with the slide deck.
Our apologies. We are bringing the slides back up now.
Okay. Again, the target population now, just reiterate, youth who are currently using or have used opioids. Youth at high risk for opioid use, youth with family members who are currently using or have used opioids. Eligible applicants are limited to national organizations as defined in Category 1. States, including territories, federally recognized tribal governments as determined by the Secretary of Interior. All recipients and subrecipients must forego any profit or management fee. Rural communities. Priority will be given to applicants that target services in rural communities across the country as defined by the Office of Management and Budget on the basis of the standards for delineating metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas.
Bear with us while we get back to the page that we were discussing. And at this point, I think we're ready to turn to Carrie.
Thank you, Eric and Kristen. We should be on slide what an application should include. So I'm going to take us there. My apologies. William, could you assist me with getting to slide 43?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us. So there's quite a few things that you'll need to provide with your application. And the first thing is your SF424. If this is on page 18 of the solicitation, you'll want to make sure that you fill that out. Additionally, you're going to need to provide a project abstract, your program narrative, of course, which has a 30-page limit, your budget detail worksheet and budget narrative. If you are submitting an indirect cost rate agreement, of course, you need to attach that. If it's applicable, your tribal authorizing resolution. You definitely need to attach your financial management and system of internal controls questionnaire. Your disclosure of lobbying activities is another attachment. This is new to the solicitation this year. If applicable, you want to have documentation of your anticipated benefit of your qualified opportunity zones. Now, if you're a DOJ high-risk grantee, you will also need to provide disclosure and your justification. And then we also have several other additional attachments, which some of you are familiar with, such as your executive summary chart, your logic model, things like that, which we will get to shortly. And I apologize, we are still not at the right slide. Oh. Okay, so here we go. So first, one of the attachments, your project abstract. You need to summarize your program in 400 words or less. If you're applying for category 1, we really need you to explain in detail how you are going to include the AI and youth in your project abstract. Your program narrative, again, this is a 30-page limit. After 30 pages, we will not review the narrative. You need to provide the statement of the problem. Your goals, objectives, and performance measures are within this. Your project design and implementation, the capabilities and competencies, and then just for category 3 and 4, you are required to have letters of support, your memorandums of understanding. So the statement of the problem, you should briefly describe the nature and scope of the problem and how your program will address it. You should use data to provide evidence that the problem does exist and demonstrate the size and scope, and document the effects of the problem on the target population and the community that you're going to serve. You should also describe the target population and any previous or current attempts to address the problem. So the goals, objectives, and performance measures. Clearly, you need to describe the goals of the proposed program and identify the objectives. The performance measures are listed in the solicitation in that grid, but you are not required to submit performance measures with your application. They're just there as an alert that we will require the successful applicants to submit specific data as part of your reporting requirements. And so you should indicate that you have an understanding of these requirements and discuss how you are going to gather this required data should you receive funding. In terms of the program's design and implementation, you should detail how the project is going to operate throughout the entire funding period and describe the strategies that you're going to use to achieve the goals and objectives that you state. And so this should include how the mentoring is tailored to the needs of the identified at-risk and system-involved youth populations. You should develop and implement enhanced practices that further align with research. Throughout this solicitation, we refer you to the National Mentoring Resource Center site for this. And then also, as we spoke about previously, we want you to let us know how you're going to include family engagement. In terms of capabilities and competencies, we would like you to describe your experience and the capability of your organization, and also the contractors or subgrantees that you will be working with to implement the programs. We'd like you to highlight any previous experience implementing projects or similar design of this magnitude. We would like you to tell us how you meet each of the qualifications outlined under priority considerations and project-specific information for the category that you are applying for. And we also would like you to describe the experience you have providing mentoring practices of a similar scope and scale. So you also need to demonstrate the ability to implement the program and the enhancements. Again, for category 1, you should include a detailed description of how you have experience in serving American Indian and Alaska Native youth through your mentoring services. We also need you to provide a copy of an organizational chart showing how the organization operates, who manages the finances, subrecipients, if you have any, and the management of the proposed project. Again, it is required for category 3 and 4 only that you provide letters of support. The lead applicant organization must include this signed and dated letter of support or memorandum of understanding. For category 3, with a juvenile justice agency, and for category 4, that would be with a substance abuse treatment agency. And these bullets are what we need. The expression of support for the program and a statement of willingness to participate and collaborate. A description of the partner's current role and responsibilities in planning the process and the expected responsibilities once the program is in place and operational. The estimate of the percentage of time that the partner is going to devote to the planning and operation of the project. So for categories 1, 2, and 5, you are welcome to include letters of support, but they are not required. And just so you all know, they are not considered in the peer review process. Now, regarding your budget detail worksheet and budget narrative, it should thoroughly and clearly describe every single category of expenses listed in your proposed budget detail worksheet. We expect that the budget is complete, cost-effective, and that it's allowable. Like previous years, we're requesting applicants to budget funds to support as many as 2 staff to travel once each year to a 2-day national meeting as OJJDP will direct, so approximately budget $2,000 per person. So some other items that your application should include, we would like information on your proposed subaward, if that's applicable, information on your proposed procurement contract, again, if this pertains to you and your application. We need everyone to provide a disclosure of pending application and also an executive summary chart. Some additional attachments are your logic model, your timeline, resumes of key personnel, and then job descriptions which explain the responsibilities for all key positions. So the selection criteria will be 15% will go to the statement of the problem, 10% is the goals, objectives, and performance measures. Project design and implementation is at 35%, as is capabilities and competencies. The budget is just at 5%. We're looking for cost effectiveness and the amount of direct service funding. So OJP's review process, we are committed to ensuring a fair and open process for grant awards. OJJDP reviews the applications to make sure that the information is reasonable, understandable, measurable, and achievable, as well as is consistent with the solicitation. Peer reviewers will review the applications submitted under this solicitation to make sure that they meet the basic minimum requirements. OJJDP may use internal peer reviewers, external peer reviewers, or a combination to review these applications. Some other important considerations are geographic diversity, strategic priorities, and then, of course, availability of funds. So here's some of the more basic information of how to apply. All applications must be submitted through grants.gov. We really highly encourage you to get these in early. Oftentimes people wait till the last minute and everybody's trying to submit, which can cause some technical problems. So we urge you to submit your application 72 hours prior to the due date so you can receive that validation message or rejection notification from grants.gov and fix your problem if needed. Please note late applications are not accepted unless, of course, you can provide us with justification for some problems with grants.gov. OJJDP strongly encourages all applicants to sign up for grants.gov email because it will notify you regarding any updates or changes, modifications to this solicitation. So here you have some more information to assist you. You can refer back to if needed. And here's some other resources, again, that you can refer to that can really help you with the application process. Of course, there's the solicitation link. The DOJ Financial Guide, I recommend no matter how familiar you are with things, it's always good to go back and check. This will be very beneficial for your budget detail and worksheet and budget narrative. The National Mentoring Resource Center is a phenomenal site for your questions regarding mentoring programs. And then, of course, here's some links for grant writing tips. Okay, so now I believe after William gives us a little bit of information, are we going to move right into questions and answers? I see through the chat that there's quite a few questions, and I believe all of us, Kristen, Eric, and myself, are going to do our best to get to them. I just want to preface things with, we can't answer individual questions regarding your particular program, but we're happy to answer questions that you have regarding the actual solicitation.
And Carrie, this is Kristen. I would just add to your point that questions can still be provided to the phone number and contact information you provided in the slide. And because it's a fair and open competition, there are some things that we cannot go beyond what is in the solicitation to clarify. However, I do, as Carrie said, see a number of questions in here, some of which were answered as Carrie presented. So if you'll give us a minute, we can scroll through and clarify some that may not have been answered since the question was submitted. And it looks like there are some questions around clarifying details for Category 1 and Category 2 with regard to eligibility. The questions for Category 1 are around the issue of whether they need to have 45 active subchapters or subawardees, and the answer is yes. You need to be working and have active subchapters in at least 45 states to be eligible as a Category 1 national mentoring program. The reference to 38 states has to do with the 90% being encouraged to subaward 90% to at least 38 states. I'm trying to flip to that page. So,
and of course,
Carrie,
if you don't meet the 45 state requirement, you can apply to Category 2 if you're between that 5 and 45. But again, for Category 1, this is our national, the largest in scope mentoring program. You are nationwide. I saw a question regarding Category 3 prior to talking, And in terms of eligibility, it's on page 9. It was regarding MOU and the partnership. And as stated on page 9, you must establish a formal relationship with a juvenile justice agency to be eligible. And we want evidence of this formal relationship, but it can be established specifically in response to this funding opportunity. So agencies that have an existing relationship with a juvenile justice agency will be given priority consideration, but others that form in hopes of receiving funding for this solicitation are welcome, and eligible to apply. I'm reading a question regarding if reimbursements are provided in various stages for Category 4, and, you will have certain special conditions on your award at the beginning, and once those are released, you'll have access to your funds, but you should be drawing down on an as-needed basis, like a reimbursement basis. So you and your finance team, we're looking for the program performance, and what you've completed should match how much funding you are drawing down at each increment. I see a question regarding Category 3. Is it $500,000 per year or for the 3 years? And the award amounts listed in the solicitation are for the entire award period. So the $500,000 is for the 3 years, should you choose to do the 36 months. It is not each year. It's for the entire project period. So somebody asked what category is available for an agency that is in one state, and that could work for Category 3 or 4.
Carrie, there is a question whether applicants are going to be required to report on all the measures in Appendix A. And as an award, if you are selected as a grantee, you will need to collect and report on all the measures that are applicable to your project design. Carrie, do you have one?
Somebody asked if the 30-page limit includes the MOUs and letters of support, and the answer is no. Those can be separate attachments. Those are not within your 30-page limit.
I see a couple of questions about having access to the presentation slides after the webinar, and the answer is yes, and William will cover that at the end of the webinar. And of course, all of the content in the slides are taken directly from the solicitation because we cannot go beyond the solicitation in our comments.
Somebody asked about the list of measures for Category 3 and 4. Our performance measures for all of the categories will be the same. They don't differentiate. It's just obviously your data will vary depending upon your program and the number of youth that you're serving. We have a question about how matches are counted. And again, that's up to your program design. Are you doing a one-to-one match? Are you, doing group mentoring? So that's actually information that you should be sharing with us. Again, we have some questions about the youth and starting the program. You know, you must be 17 years old or younger. You know, we are a juvenile justice agency, and therefore we are assisting youth. There is a question whether these questions will be written up and posted somewhere. And again, I do believe all of this information will be posted after the event. And again, for the solicitation, you know, you can keep questioning. You know, you can call the center if you have further questions, and we will be happy to get back to you. Again, as Kristen stated, we can't go into particulars regarding your specific program, but if you have questions in terms of the solicitation itself and how you're viewing it, we are happy to respond accordingly. A couple people have asked about the enhancements. And yes, we want you to discuss all 6 and how your program is going to work with them accordingly.
There's a question about applying for multiple categories of funding and whether that affects their chances for any of the categories. And the answer is no. The priority considerations articulated in the solicitation are what drive decisions in the peer review process. So the competitions are independent of each other. There's a question about risk levels that I'm not completely understanding in terms of the way it's phrased, but the risk levels need to be defined by you in the proposal in stating your case for targeting any particular youth. There's a question about resumes. We would be looking for key personnel. The applicant would need to define the key personnel. And I think from our perspective, it would not be only the CEOs. It would be the people leading and managing the work.
Again, I see a question. If you believe your target population works under a particular category, you can certainly apply. If you think you fit under 2 different categories, you're welcome to apply if you think you meet the eligibility requirements listed in the solicitation. There's a question whether there's a specific number regarding the minimum youth served in Category 2, and there is not a specific number in mind. Again, you just need to make sure that your organization meets the eligibility requirements, and we would hope that the amount of funding you request would work with the number of youth that you anticipate assisting in a particular way. I see a question if you don't have a specific person in mind that you have a job description, can you submit that instead of a resume? And the answer is yes. I'm seeing some questions regarding collaborations. Again, for categories 3 and 4, we are looking for collaborations and demonstrated partnerships. If you're wondering about your eligibility, it's just that you have operated an established mentoring program for at least 1 year. There is language that it's limited to private organizations. So if you meet those eligibility requirements, you should apply. There was a question regarding the template for the logic model, and you are welcome, if you believe your organization's logic model is extremely thorough, to provide that as an attachment, or you can use the template if you would prefer. In terms of the budget detail worksheets and things, I would highly recommend that you use OJP's template.
I see a question about the question is there a proportional adjustment of award funds based on the number of states and the reach? The answer is no, there is not a particular formula for that. It is up to the applicant to justify and support the budget relative to the project design. And that would be true in all categories.
There was a question regarding page 12 and the enhancements. So as you will see in 2A, we want you to address each of the 6 areas of core practice standards. But in terms of your project design enhancements, it can be 1 or more. So just to clarify for that individual, there's a difference between within Objective 2 between A and B on page 12. So for criteria B, we want you to identify and implement program design enhancements in 1 or more of the 6 core practice areas. I see something about the qualified opportunity zone, and the priority consideration will be for 3 and 4. I see a question regarding at-risk youth, and we have a definition of that in the solicitation. So I recommend you use that in your assessment. Again, for Category 1, there is not a minimum or maximum amount of funding that you can request. That's up to you. And that's the only category that we do not have a specific amount, a funding limit. Somebody has asked how we define juvenile justice agency for Category 3, the juvenile justice system. And again, this is provided within the solicitation. Actually, on page 1, youth involved in the juvenile justice system refers to those youth who have been arrested or referred for intake to a public agency, legally responsible for handling juvenile crime, delinquency, and youth in need of guidance, treatment, or rehabilitation due to problematic behavior.
Terry, there's a question I'm going to kick to you about still clarifying this age issue about being 17 and under at admission, whether the applicant could still continue to serve the youth after they turn 18 as long as admissions was prior, was at 17 or under.
And yes, that's acceptable. Somebody asked if there's a list of prior awardees, and there is. If you go to OJJDP's website, you can find that information. We've gotten a question again, what's the maximum age for Category 3? And again, all youth need to be 17 years or under at the time of the application. And, you know, if they age out during the program, I believe as long as they started, it is okay. We understand you can't stop a relationship when they turn 18.
We're still receiving questions about how risk is defined. We encourage applicants to refer back to the solicitation, which speaks to OJJDP's definitions around risk, and anything that is not specified to any of your questions should be, we would encourage the applicant to base their proposed approach around research in evidence-based. So it would be anything not specified in the solicitation, it would be incumbent on the applicant to make a case. And one of the considerations is the research and evidence-based proposed through your project design. So we would leave it to you to define anything that we have not.
Again, I'm seeing if the $500,000 budget for Category 3 is the total amount, and that is yes.
That's the maximum amount per applicant.
Yes.
Carrie, I'm just going to let you know that I lost my connection, so leaving it to you on questions, and we'll give folks a few more minutes to ask any remaining questions. It sounds like we've reached a point where some of the questions are repeat, and remind folks that they can follow up with any additional questions to our response center. That call number was one of the slide up on the screen.
Yeah, you can. You should still see it. The response center number is 1-800-851-3420, or you can email grants@ncjrs.com.
And William, if you could give me back the presenter chat so that I can see questions, I'd appreciate it. I've lost my connection. It's back, but I only see, I don't see backstage.
There was a question about how many awards in Category 3. Last year, we did 9 awards. I'm seeing some questions about funding, and I would recommend that you check out the OJP financial guide. The link was provided in the webinar. As to what is allowable or not allowed with the government. So again, if there are further questions, please email grants@ncjrs.com. Please refer to the webinar slides, the solicitation, the various supporting links we provided. I think all of them can really help you in your application process. And again, if you have certain questions you want answered, we are happy to try and provide a response if sent to the response center.
All right. So it looks like we're nearing towards the end. So if it's okay with you all, we can go ahead and wrap up, and I can just finish us out with a few last-minute announcements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And so, again, I want to thank all of the presenters today for joining us and providing much-needed information about the grant solicitation. You may contact NTTAC through the website displayed on the slide here. You can also stay up to date on the latest information by signing up for NTTAC's TTA listserv. And also don't forget to check us out on Facebook. If you'd like to contact OJJDP, you can do so via the Help Desk by following the contact information on this slide. And do you have a TTA need? If so, please submit a request for help via the OJJDP's TTA 360 platform through the link displayed on this slide. And as a reminder, the webinar recording will be archived on NTTAC's YouTube channel, where you can also view past webinars. For the event transcript and other supporting materials, please contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. I know some folks experienced some of the difficulties with the slides, but remember we have those handouts available, and we will have those handouts at a later date through the help desk. And lastly, I just wanted to remind everyone, if you could, we would appreciate it if you could take about 5 minutes to complete the feedback evaluation. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.